Deborah Nelson, Judge, presiding.
Please be seated. Good morning.
Good morning, Your Honor.
We're back on the record, case number 12CF1083A, State versus George Zimmerman. Is Ms. Gentile outside? We need to get her. Good morning. Be seated. Are we ready to bring our jury back in?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, let's go ahead and bring them in.
Jurors are present.
Please be seated. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back. I should say gentleman. While you're getting settled in, I'm going to ask my morning questions. If your answer is yes to any of the questions, please raise your hand. During the overnight recess, did any of you have any conversations amongst yourselves or with anybody else about the case? No hands are being raised. Did any of you read or listen to any radio, television, newspaper reports about the case? No hands are being raised. Did any of you use an electronic device to get on the internet to do any independent research about the case, people, places, things, terminology? No hands are being raised. And finally, did any of you read or create any emails, text messages, Twitters, tweets, blogs, or social networking pages about the case? No hands are being raised. Thank you very much. Ms. Gentile, good morning. I'm going to remind you that you're still under oath. When you took your oath yesterday, it remains in effect. Mr. West, you may proceed.
Does this need to be here? Can it be up here? I'm sorry, if we could just need a little space. Good morning.
Good morning.
yesterday, we were talking about an interview that you gave to Mr. Crump over the telephone.
Yes.
And we had focused on a part of that interview where you were telling Mr. Crump what Trayvon Martin said that you heard, "Why you following me?" is what you said that he said, correct?
Yes.
And that the first thing that you told Mr. Crump that you heard from Mr. Zimmerman was, "What are you talking about?" Remember saying that yesterday?
Yes.
And then that changed to, "What are you doing around here?"
Your Honor, I'm going to object as to going
Rephrase
over.
as to the word changed.
Pardon me?
Rephrase your question, the objections to the word changed.
The first time you answered the question, "What did you hear?" you said that the other man, Mr. Zimmerman, said, what are you talking about?" Remember that being your answer?
I don't remember that. Yes. I don't remember,
'Cause-
but yes.
You saw that on the deposition and you agreed that's what you'd said.
Yes.
And then when asked again, or when you were talking about that same thing again, instead of saying, "What are you talking about?" it became, "What you doing around here?" Correct?
Yes.
And then at your deposition, when I took your deposition, you said, in the letter that you
Your Honor,
wrote,
I'm going to object again as to restating what occurred yesterday as opposed to asking a question.
Okay, it's a preliminary question. I'll allow it. From an overnight recess, just to set where we are.
in your deposition, you said, in fact, that in the letter that you wrote to Sabrina Fulton, you said, "What you doing around here," was what you attributed to Mr. Zimmerman.
Yes.
At your deposition is when we learned for the first time that you had written a letter, correct?
Yes.
You had never said that in any of your other statements.
No.
The letter was the one that you and your friend put together, the one that you gave to Ms. Fulton on March 19th.
Yes.
And you had never mentioned that to anyone prior to you mentioning it to us in Miami in March of this year.
It was a personal letter for her.
Of course, I know that's what you said. You didn't even tell the prosecutor about it?
No.
You met with the prosecutor, though, in Jacksonville in early August, correct?
Yes.
And that's when you told him, "Oh, I didn't go to the hospital. I lied about that."
Yes.
But you didn't tell him you'd written the letter?
No.
May I have the letter, please? I can look real quick. Marked as defendant CC for identification. Let me approach you for a moment and show you this letter. It's a copy, of course. Will you take a look at it? And
Judge, if the intent is to introduce it, I have no objection to it being introduced as evidence.
Are you seeking to have it introduced?
yes.
Okay. It'll come into evidence as defendants next. I don't. 17. Thank you.
Should we mark it now?
You can have. Sarah.
Okay. Ms. Gentile, let me show you the letter. It's now marked as Defendant's Exhibit 17. And let me then ask you a few questions about that.
I'm going to object to this witness, the letter. There's a reason why, and I don't want to make a speaking objection, but
Okay. Well, please approach.
Ms. Gentile, would you take a look at that copy of the letter, and let me ask you a couple of questions about it. Do you recognize that letter as being one that you said earlier was prepared to be given to Ms. Fulton?
Yes.
And that letter was prepared with the assistance of a friend of yours named Francine Serve?
Yes.
And you and Ms. Serve talked about what you wanted to be in the letter, and then she helped write it in a way that was legible, correct?
Yes.
But the contents of the letter are yours.
Yes.
Are you able to read that copy well enough that you can tell us if it's in fact the same letter?
No.
Are you unable to read that at all?
Some of them I do not.
Can you read any of the words on it?
I don't understand. Cursive. I don't read cursive.
Did you sign it at the bottom?
Yes.
What name did you use?
Diamond Eugene.
I'm sorry.
Diamond Eugene.
Downey,
Diamond Eugene.
Are you saying that
No, I have no objection. This thing keeps flashing right here on the computer. I wonder if we could do something. I don't know if it's
Without
distracting.
putting the screen up, can we take the flashing off?
that's your name that you signed at the bottom?
Yes.
But it's not actually your name.
No.
That's a name that you made up,
That's my nickname.
but your last name isn't Eugene.
That's my mother.
Right.
Last
So
name.
you signed it Diamond Eugene so as not to use your real name?
Yes.
I'll read the letter then. Can you not read this here?
Yes.
What does that say?
March the 19th, 2012.
And can you read this at the bottom?
Thank you.
And then you signed your name.
Yes.
And you can't read any of the words here?
Not all of them.
But you can read typewritten words, just not cursive?
Yeah.
Subject to correction by the state, the letter reads as follows. I was on the phone when Trayvon decided to go to the corner store. It started to rain, so he decided to walk through another complex because it was raining too hard. He started walking, then noticed someone was following him. Then he decided to find a shortcut.
There's an objection here.
Should be then, you stated he.
Would you like to read it?
I don't mind, but I don't mind you reading. I think.
Okay, direct your comments to me, please. Go ahead and read and correct the sentence.
I'll start it.
Okay.
I should take the podium probably. I was on the phone when Trayvon decided to go to the corner store. It started to rain, so he decided to walk through another complex because it was raining too hard. He started walking, then noticed someone was following him. So I'll read that again. I was on the phone when Trayvon decided to go to the corner store. It started to rain, so he decided to walk through another complex because it was raining too hard. He started walking, then noticed someone was following him. Then he decided to find a shortcut because the man wouldn't follow him. Then he said the man didn't follow him again. Then he looked back and saw the man again. The man started getting closer. Then Trayvon turned around and said, "Why are you following me?" Then I heard him fall. Then the phone hung up. I called back and text, no response. In my mind, I thought it was just a fight. Then I found out this tragic story. Thank you, Diamond Eugene. Is that the letter that you and Ms. Serve prepared to give to Sabrina Fulton?
Yes.
And contrary to what you said at the deposition, this letter does not, in fact, contain any response that the person gave to Trayvon Martin when he said, "Why are you following me?"
Yes.
Further, you say that you thought this was just a fight.
Yes.
This was the letter that you gave to Ms. Fulton on the same day that you talked with her and told her basically what happened.
Yes.
And you told her, I take it, then the same thing that you said here, or did you tell her more?
Tell her more.
Did you tell her that the man that Trayvon said, "Why are you following me?" to responded in some way?
Yes.
And what did you tell her that he said?
Repeat your question again.
Mm-hmm. Did you tell Ms. Fulton what the man said when Trayvon Martin said, "Why you following me?" Did you say to Ms. Fulton what the man said in response?
Yes.
And what did you tell her?
What you doing around here?
I'm sorry.
What are you doing around here?
So that's what you told Ms. Fulton.
Yes. In the car. Yes.
And you're sure you actually had a conversation with Ms. Fulton?
Not
where-
for that long. Not for that long.
Mhm. Agreed. I'm not challenging that, but you're saying that you had a conversation about the facts of the case, if you will.
Yes.
correct? And those facts included you saying that Mr. Zimmerman said, "What you doing around here?"
Yes.
You do acknowledge, though, the first time that you were asked that question in your interview with Mr. Crump later that day, your response was that Mr. Zimmerman said, "What are you talking about?"
Yes.
Are you sure those were the words that Trayvon Martin said, or could you have been sort of trying to figure out what was said, and that's what you came up with?
I'm sure.
Which are you sure about? That he said,
Why are you
"What are you
following
talking
me?
about?" or "Why are you following me?"
Why are you following me, Bo?
But-
Why are you following me? What Trayvon said, why are you following me for?
But you first said in response to that question, "What are you talking about?" was the answer.
I cannot hear you, sir. I cannot hear you, sir.
Your testimony today is what you heard on the phone the man say that George Zimmerman was, "What are you doing around here?"
Yes.
And in the first statement that you made to Mr. Crump in his interview of you, you said what Mr. Zimmerman's response was, "What are you talking about?"
Yes.
It was in the interview with Mr. Crump that you said you thought this was a racial thing.
He had asked me if it was a racial thing.
What did he say?
Do you think this situation was a racial thing? And I had
Mr. Crump asked you that on the recording.
yes.
Have you had a chance to look at the transcript or listen to the recording? Did you ever hear him say that on the recording?
There are, I'm going to get to the compound
Yeah, you need to
questions.
break your question up.
Sure. Do you remember him saying that specifically to you during that phone interview?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen a transcript of the recording or ever listened to the recording to know whether or not, in fact, it's there?
Yes.
And is it there?
No.
But your comment is that you think it's a racial thing.
Yes.
So in other words, Mr. Crump didn't record that part of the conversation where he asked you if you thought it was a racial thing, but only recorded your answer when you said you think it's a racial thing.
Objection as to what Mr. Crump did or did not do.
Sustained. She can't testify what he thought. She can only testify as to what she heard. Your question is, did Mr. Crump ever do that? If she's not around him, there's no way for her to know if he did that when she's not there. She could testify as to what she heard.
Yes, what I'm
rephrase.
focusing in on is this. You believe that Mr. Crump asked you in that recorded interview whether you thought it was a racial thing.
Yes. It was true.
And then when you've had a chance to listen to the recording or look at the transcript, you can't find his question anywhere in it.
No.
You have had a chance, though, to review your transcripts or prior statements, haven't you?
Yes.
So you decided it was a racial thing because someone told you it was a racial thing, or you came up with this on your own, or why did you conclude that this was a racial thing?
How the situation happened. How the situation happened
How about what was being said on the news?
on the news.
Mhm.
The interview between me and Crump happened before the news even knew about it. Before the nationwide knew about the situation.
So your belief is that you had the interview with Mr. Crump before this story was in the news about George Zimmerman racially profiling and murdering Trayvon Martin.
Yes.
You'd never heard that before.
I told you I don't watch the news.
Well, how about when you talked with Tracy Martin? Did he say, would you please come forward because we are saying this is a racially motivated murder?
No. He just asked me, can I talk to his attorney?
How about when you talked to Ms. Fulton? Did she say, would you please come forward and talk to our attorney and record it because we think this is a racially charged event?
No.
And you didn't have any information from the news that this was a racially charged event?
No, I had told you I don't watch the news.
Okay. Are you okay this morning?
Yeah.
You seem so different than yesterday. I'm just checking. Did someone talk with you? Yes. Did someone talk with you last night about your demeanor in court yesterday?
No, I went to sleep.
So your testimony is that you hadn't heard anything on the news about this being a racially charged incident.
I'm going to judge to ask an answer now. He's repeating the answers.
Sustained.
Your Honor, may we approach, please?
No.
You didn't know anything about this case on the news following the shooting on February 26th, prior to your interview with Mr. Crump on March 19th.
No, sir. I haven't. I had told you that yesterday.
Mhm.
I don't watch the news.
And no one else told you that
No,
there was a
sir.
lot of noise about this being a racially charged event?
No, sir.
So when you answered Mr. Crump's question, that's not on the recording, what you think about it being a racially charged event, you said, yes, it was.
Yes, sir.
And what did you base your answer that you thought it was a racial thing? What information did you base that on?
Because how the situation happened.
Tell me, what is it about this event specifically that convinced you it was racially based?
Trayvon was being followed, and it was around 7, and it's not that late, and it's in the rain. Like, come on now.
It is in the rain.
It's in the rain. Around it's raining.
All right, so it's raining,
Yes,
and he's out by himself walking around,
yes.
and
Not walking around, just standing under a shade when it's raining.
you don't really know what he was actually doing, do you?
Under a shade, yes.
You don't actually know that, do you?
I know when I asked him where he at. He told me he's under a shade in
Right.
the middle area.
So what you know about this whole event is what Mr. Martin told you and what you interpreted it to mean.
Objection, argumentative, that's the question.
Overruled.
Repeat your question. again.
Sure. That you didn't see anything, you weren't there.
No.
You still don't know where the mail thing is, or where any of the streets are, or where on the map Trayvon Martin was staying, correct?
No.
You don't know how far the man was from him at any given point in time.
He wasn't that far because Trayvon told me that the man was is watching him.
Right. So, before I lose track here, everything that you've told us is based upon whatever Trayvon Martin told you that you can remember,
Yes.
and then what you interpreted it to mean.
Yes.
So when you say it's a racial event,
Yes.
what did he tell you that made you think it was a racial event?
Somebody just watching him, and then he described the person that was watching him and following him, and that was kind of strange. That a person keep watching you and following you,
So he
like
said,
he being stalked,
I'm sorry.
like he's being stalked from that person.
what makes that racial?
That wouldn't make that racial. It was made that racial.
What's one thing about what Trayvon Martin told you that made you think this was racial?
Describing the person.
Pardon me?
Describing the person.
I just didn't.
Describing the person that was watching him and following him.
I see.
Sir.
Describing the person is what made you think it was racial?
Yes.
And that's because he described him as a creepy-ass cracker?
Yes.
So it was racial, but it was because Trayvon Martin put race in this.
No.
You don't think that's a racial comment?
No.
You don't think that creepy-ass cracker is a racial comment?
No.
Well, you didn't mention it in your letter, correct?
That's just a personal letter to the mama.
All right, you didn't tell
That's just a personal letter to the mother.
You didn't tell Ms. Fulton that the man that was following him was a creepy-ass cracker, did you?
No.
You didn't tell Mr. Crump in the recorded interview that Trayvon Martin described George Zimmerman as a creepy-ass cracker.
No.
And when you met with Mr. Della Rionda for the first time on April 2nd, 2012, you never told him in your interview that Trayvon Martin said a creepy-ass cracker was following him.
No. I did say creepy, sir.
Yes, I agree. You did say creepy.
Yes.
So the reason you didn't say that, though, was because you didn't think it was relevant?
Nobody asked me. You come ask me what exactly that Trayvon said that night about the person that was following him and watching him. That's what you asked me when I met up with you.
So never before I met with you in March did you ever tell anyone exactly what you heard Trayvon Martin say? correct?
About the person, describing the person?
Yes, in any of the interviews where you were asked what was said, what happened next,
What was said, yes, I did. What, by describing him, no, I did not. I
You
just
said
said creepy. The only
some
thing-
dude's following.
One at a time, because the court reporter has to take down both voices. If you'll allow her to please finish her answer. Are you finished with your answer?
Yes.
Okay, you may ask your next question.
Of course you wouldn't say it to Sabrina Fulton because it was offensive, correct?
Yes. That was disrespectful.
Pardon
That
me?
was disrespectful.
Of
if
course
I
it
say
was,
to
yes.
her.
You may not consider it a racial comment, but it's
No.
certainly offensive, isn't it?
No.
You don't think calling someone a creepy-ass cracker is offensive?
No.
So, but you specifically chose not to tell Ms. Fulton that's what Trayvon Martin said,
No.
because you thought it would hurt her feelings, didn't you?
No.
You didn't think that would bother her if you said that her son described the man that was following him in a car on the phone
I didn't think
was
that
a
was
creepy-ass
important.
cracker?
I did not think that was important.
Not important enough to put in the letter,
No.
and not important enough to tell her.
Objection has been answered.
Can we move on to another topic?
Just to be clear then, you didn't include that in the letter, and you didn't include it in the conversation you had on March 19th with Ms. Fulton.
No.
And when you were interviewed by Mr. Crump later that day, you didn't say it.
No.
And then you were interviewed but you did say to Mr. Crump that you thought the event itself was a racial thing.
Yes. He had asked me, and I said yes.
And I was asking you then, what made you think that? And then you were saying just because of the description. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
The description being there was a man on the phone in a car watching him.
Yes.
And you met
follow
you.
him.
Pardon me?
And follow him.
Right. So you took that to be racial
Yes.
without any additional information.
No.
On April 2nd, you had an opportunity to meet with the prosecutor, correct?
Yes.
Up until that point, you had never spoken with law enforcement.
No.
Even following your interview with Mr. Crump, you didn't then go to the police.
No.
Even after hearing part of your interview on national television, or hearing about it, you didn't go to the police.
No.
And apparently the police hadn't contacted you.
No. They were trying to find me.
Pardon me?
They was trying to find me
What makes you think that?
because they just had my, fake name, Diamond Eugene, and they couldn't find me.
How did they have your fake name?
By the parents did not know.
Would you speak
By
up?
the parents did not know my real name. They only knew me as Diamond.
But they had your phone number, right?
Yes.
Because there were text and phone calls.
Between who?
You and Miss Fulton.
No.
She sent you a text.
That was March the 19th.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yes.
After March 19th, you didn't go to law enforcement, and law enforcement never contacted you, correct?
Correct.
But Ms. Fulton had your phone number,
Yes.
so she could have given that to the police.
Yes.
She could have given it to the Sanford Police Department, couldn't she?
Yeah.
Objection, no. object as to what somebody else could have or not done. Ms. Beal.
Sustained.
She didn't have your real name because you'd lied about that, but she did have your phone number.
Yes.
And in between March 19th and April 2nd, nobody from the police department called you.
I can't recall, but no, because my phone was.
I can't recall.
I can't recall. My phone was off. I shut it off.
Did you shut your phone off, are you saying, between March 19th
No,
and...
I shut it off. It was a lot of phone calls.
I'm sorry.
It was a lot of phone
Was it
calls.
disconnected?
No. I shut it off.
You turned it off.
I turned it off.
How long did you leave your phone off?
Be 3, in a day it'll be 3 hours or 4 hours.
Well, when you turned it back on, you would get voicemails, wouldn't you?
Yes.
You'd get any text messages.
I ain't getting no text message.
But you would, if someone had sent you one after you turned the phone on, you get your text messages.
Yes.
And when you turned your phone back on between March 19th and April 2nd, there weren't any text messages from Ms. Fulton telling you to please go to the police,
No.
or any messages from law enforcement saying, would you please
By me
contact?
watching the television, I thought the police was already in the case.
Say that again.
By me watching television, I thought the police already knew about the case.
So I didn't think you watched television, I'm sorry.
That was before
Mhm.
March the 19th. When March the 20th, that's when I started watching the television. That's when my voice became on television. That's when I started paying attention to the news.
So on March 20th, when they had the press conference about you,
No,
Is
I
when
didn't
you-
see the press conference. They only showed half it. Say Trayvon Martin was on the phone with the final moments.
did the news then you're talking about that had your voice on it was the recording made by ABC News?
Yes, I think.
Did you talk with somebody from ABC News separately from your interview with Mr. Crumb?
Yes.
And when and where was that, please?
I don't remember, but it was by phone.
I don't remember that.
I don't remember. It was by phone.
And when, approximately? After March 19th was the day that you were interviewed. When did you, after that, talk with the reporter from ABC News?
I don't remember.
Roughly.
Before I even talked to the state attorney.
Sometime between March 19th, when you gave your interview to Mr. Crumb,
Yes.
and you didn't know you were being recorded then by ABC, correct?
No.
But after that, though, you had a separate phone interview with ABC?
Yes.
Was it the next day, the day after, a week later? Any idea?
No.
And who was it that you talked with?
I don't know his name.
Did he know your name?
He didn't know my real name.
What, did you give him a name?
He had told me.
I can't hear the witness. Would the court ask the
Could you
witness?
speak up a little bit, please?
He had told me he had got my number. Well, she had got my number from the ABC reporter. She had texted me saying she wanted to know about Trayvon, what kind of person he was. Can I have a talk with her boss, I think, about Trayvon, what kind of person he was.
So you got a text from somebody where the media wanted to talk with you further.
It was an ABC woman.
Right.
It was an ABC woman.
And then you gave,
She had called, she texted.
and then you agreed to have a separate recorded interview.
Yes.
And do you know the person that interviewed you?
No.
Did you tell them the name Diamond Eugene?
I just told him, he had asked me how, do you want me to call me? He had asked me how he want me to say in the meteor. I said Dee Dee. That's when Dee Dee started popping up.
So you used the nickname Dee Dee to
Yeah.
identify yourself?
Yeah.
Did you tell that person how old you were?
No, he didn't ask me that.
Did he ask? He didn't ask you your real name?
No.
So that was sometime after March 19th, but before April 2nd, correct?
Yes.
And did you have any other interviews with anybody between the ABC interview and April 2nd?
No.
On April 2nd, you were interviewed by Mr. Della Rionda, correct?
Yes, sir.
And there were other agents there with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement?
Yes, sir.
So this was your first interview with law enforcement.
Yes, sir.
When you interviewed with Mr. Crump, you were rushed, you didn't take it seriously, and you weren't under oath, correct?
Yes, sir.
But on April 2nd, you were
Well,
under oath,
Yes, sir.
and you were being interviewed by the police.
Yes, sir.
And it was recorded.
Yes, sir.
From the state attorney's office, now at this point, the Jacksonville state attorney's office was involved in the case as opposed to the Seminole County state attorney's office, correct?
Yes, sir.
So Mr. Della Rionda said, I'm from Jacksonville, I'm down here to interview you, and introduced you to the FDLE agents that were present and his state attorney investigator, Mr. Osteen.
Yes, sir.
And you already had met the other people in the room?
What other people?
Well, tell me who else was in the room with you when Mr. Della Rionda was conducting the first interview by law enforcement?
Trayvon's mother.
Trayvon's mother, Sabrina Fulton, correct?
Yes.
Was in the room with you
Yes.
when Mr. Della Rionda was asking you questions for the first law enforcement interview.
Yes, sir.
And where was she in the room?
Beside me.
So she's sitting right beside you as Mr. Della Rionda is asking you questions as his office has been assigned to investigate this alleged murder case.
The objection?
Objection, he keeps repeating the answers that the witness previously gave as opposed to asking other questions, being repetitive, and also the nature of the questions.
Sustained.
May I have a little latitude on cross-examination,
Well,
please?
you're be giving a lot of latitude as you're entitled to. The objection is because you repeat the answer of the last question in your new question. And I think that you're required to just ask a new question. If you want to ask another question that gives an answer, you may do so. But the objections to continuing to repeat the answer in your new question.
I
So that is
apologize. My
sustained.
efforts to be precise so that the witness knows exactly what we're talking about, but I will try to do it a little differently.
Thank you.
Right beside you during this interview was Trayvon Martin's mother, Sabrina Fulton, correct?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Martin was also there, but not in the room, correct?
No, sir. He left before I even stepped inside the living room.
He left the living room, in other words.
Yes, sir.
You don't know that he left the residence, though, do you?
No, sir.
He may have still been there, but just not in the room with you.
Yes, sir.
Also in the room was one or more Martin family attorneys, correct?
Yes, sir.
Who were they?
don't know that name, sir.
You know Natalie Jackson?
Yes, sir.
Was she there?
On top of the stairs, sir.
I'm sorry.
On top of the stairs.
So you knew she was there and present, correct?
Yes, sir.
Was Mr. Crump present?
No, he left before I even stepped inside the house.
But you saw him that night.
Not that night, that afternoon.
When you say that afternoon, tell me about that. I'm sorry, maybe I misspoke. The interview itself took place in the early evening, didn't it?
Yes, sir.
So you met with Mr. Crump earlier that day?
No, sir.
Tell me then what you mean, that you saw him.
When he went to, when the detective and Miss Sabrina and
I'm sorry, when the detective and
Miss Sabrina and Crump, he had joined in,
he had,
came with them to have pick me up from my friend's residence, so I could go back there to have an interview with the state. That's when I met Crump. That's my first time meeting Crump.
The other time it was only on the phone when you
Yes.
talked with
When
him.
the interview, yes.
And this day, on April 2nd, 2012, you met him because he was one of the people that went to your friend's house to pick you up,
Yes.
to bring you to Miss Fulton's house, correct?
Yes.
This interview actually took place at Sabrina Fulton's home in her living room, correct?
Yes, sir.
So Mr. Crump came to your friend's home to pick you up along with whom?
I was outside already. I
Okay.
met him.
But of your friend's house.
Yes.
So
sir.
Mr. Crump came to get you, correct?
Not come to get me. He was in another car. And
Two-
I was in,
Two cars came to
with
get you.
detectives and stuff.
So that afternoon, Mr. Crump was in one of the cars that was dispatched to go pick you up.
Yes, sir.
And you were in the front yard of your friend's house.
Yes, sir.
And law enforcement also was involved in picking you up?
Yes, sir.
You don't know why then law enforcement would permit Mr. Crump to come with them?
I don't know,
That's
sir.
argumentative beyond the witness's knowledge.
Sustained. It's beyond her knowledge.
I'm asking whether she knew or not, and she said no. If the court would give me a little leeway on this.
Ask your next question.
Do you know why law enforcement allowed Mr. Crump to come with them to pick you up?
No, sir.
Who else was there? Was Ms. Fulton with them?
Yes, sir.
Do you know why law enforcement allowed Ms. Fulton to be there?
Cause she's the only person who knew where my friend lived at. She lived by my friend area.
Ms. Fulton lives near where your friend lives?
Yes, sir.
But law enforcement had your phone number. They could have just called and asked you where you were, correct?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Crump had your phone number. He could have called and asked where you were.
On it.
Pardon me?
I don't know if Crump had my number.
I don't know.
I did not know. I do not know if Crump had my number.
In the interview he took of you on March 19th, didn't he say, "We're having trouble with this phone, let me call you back,"
Okay, he had my number then.
from a 904 number? And he called you back on your phone.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Gentile, I'm not saying you did anything wrong, so please don't take it that way. I'm trying to understand the
had-
dynamics of this, though.
I know I did not nothing wrong, so
I'm sorry.
I know, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. If I'm harsh in my tone, it's not because I'm suggesting you did anything wrong here. But I'm trying to understand what the overall context of this first law enforcement interview was. So the people that came to pick you up included law enforcement, but it also included Ben Crump and Sabrina.
Again, he's repeating the answers that the witness already gave.
Can we approach the
Ask
bench,
her the
please, Judge?
question. Just ask her the question, who was there?
I'd like permission to ask leading questions of this witness on cross-examination, one step at a time.
And I'm asking that you do it one step at a time.
My question is this, just to be clear as to who was present. Law enforcement, FDLE agents were present.
Yes.
Ben Crump was present. Sabrina Fulton was present in these two vehicles that came to pick you up on the afternoon of April 2nd, 2012.
Yes, sir.
And was Mr. Della Rionda present?
I don't remember him. I was in the back of the car.
Do you know of anybody else being present?
I do remember a tall dude,
I do remember,
a tall person.
Did you ever see him again later that evening?
Yes, sir.
Was he in the room?
Yes, sir.
You don't recall his name, though.
TC?
TC. Do you know that person to be an investigator with Mr. Della Rionda's office?
Yes, sir.
Was there anybody else?
In the car?
Either of the cars?
I don't know who was in the other car, but I did know who was in the car. It was.
I can't hear you, ma'am.
Could you speak a little louder?
I do not know who was in the other car, but I do know who was in the car I was in.
Let's start there then. Who was in the car with you?
TC, and I think he was in the car I think he was in the car.
Mr. Della Rionda?
Yeah, I did see a bald dude, no offense. And,
Okay, you have a juror who didn't hear the answer. Could you please speak up? If you could face the microphone a little bit better.
TC,
That's the wrong microphone.
can I just, speak to their, that's what they told me.
Yes. Try that. They're supposed to put it in.
TC, the front of the car was TC, bald-headed dude.
This
Yeah.
guy?
Yeah. Sorry, man. I didn't know you. And Sabrina and me.
And you went from your friend's house to Miss Fulton's house.
Yes, sir.
And the people that you've already identified so far were in the room with you when the interview took place?
Yes, sir.
Anybody else? Any other family members?
No, sir.
Any other lawyers?
Another lawyer from the Martin family.
Right. Remember kind of a big guy?
A big guy, yes, sir.
Do you know his name?
No, sir.
Would you know it if I said it?
No, sir.
No. So when the interview began in Miss Fulton's living room, you were seated next to Miss Fulton, and were the other people that you've identified other than Tracy Martin in the room then, or close by?
Yes, sir. Was in the living room.
I take it you knew that Miss Fulton would be hearing exactly what you said because you were sitting next to her.
Yes, sir.
And you certainly didn't want to say anything that you thought would hurt her feelings or make her grief even worse.
Yes, sir.
So because of that, you were very sensitive to Miss Fulton's feelings when you answered Mr. Della Rionda's questions.
Yes, sir.
And that is why, for example, that you cleaned up some of the language that Trayvon Martin used.
Yes, sir.
You wanted to be helpful because you wanted to help the prosecutor arrest George Zimmerman.
I never thought I was a witness, a serious witness around that time.
At that point, being interviewed by law enforcement under oath, you still hadn't concluded that you would be a witness in the case?
Not an important witness.
Not an important witness.
No.
Because of that, did that also shape some of the things you said and why you said them?
Yes,
So,
sir.
yes?
Yes, sir.
For other reasons, you didn't want to hurt Ms. Fulton's feelings, and that you really didn't think you were going to be an important witness in the case.
No, sir.
Is that why when Mr. Della Rionda wanted to know what Trayvon Martin said, you said, "This man's watching me," rather than what he actually said?
Yes, sir.
You thought that would be offensive to Ms. Fulton and to the other people in the room?
That's Mr. Fulton.
Just Ms. Fulton?
Yes, sir.
So when you answered the questions that Mr. Della Rionda asked you about what was said by whom, you were concerned about how Ms. Fulton would feel or react if you actually spoke the accurate words or the accurate truth.
Objection, the compound question is complicated.
Did you understand? I'm sorry. Did you understand my question?
the
Yes,
question?
sir. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Could you answer it?
No, sir.
Let me see if I can say it better then. When Mr. Della Rionda was asking questions about what happened and who said what, you were making it sound different than it actually was, to keep from hurting Miss Fulton's feelings.
Not all of them, sir.
I'm sorry.
Not all of them, sir.
Not all of the answers, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
But some of the answers.
Yes, sir.
Some of the answers about language, for example.
Yes, that's the only.
Yes,
That's
sir.
the only thing that I changed around. Yes, I did not
That's the
say
only thing that I changed around.
that. I did not say.
So the only thing that you didn't say that was accurate was the language that Trayvon Martin used?
Yes, sir. I didn't think it was that important. He did not ask me what was Trayvon. He did not ask me if Trayvon was describing the man. He just told me I didn't think it was that important at all. He had asked me well, how Trayvon think the man looked. I said creepy. The only thing I said was creepy. I'm not going to say it in front of the whole world, in front of people.
You weren't going to say what Trayvon Martin actually said in front of his mother.
Yeah, that's disrespectful.
Of course. Of course. No one's arguing with you about that. But that's the decision that you made, was basically to clean it up.
Yes, sir.
You knew she was grieving. She had just lost a son. You were very sensitive to that, correct?
Yes, sir.
In fact, as you were explaining what happened and answering Mr. Della Rionda's questions, with Ms. Fulton sitting there right beside you, she was crying, wasn't she?
Sure, just not crying, just tearing a little up about when I started telling what happened that night.
Again, it's so hard to hear, but did you say that she meant she wasn't crying, but she was tearing up?
Yeah, just tearing up.
Tears coming out of her eyes.
Yeah,
Do you associate that with pain and grief and suffering?
of course.
You also, though, told Mr. Della Rionda under oath that you'd gone to the hospital. Correct?
He had asked me, did I go to the hospital? I said, yeah.
So I know that you had said that earlier to Mr. Crump and to Ms. Fulton to give a plausible explanation to them for why you didn't go to the memorial service or the wake. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And then when Mr. De La Rionda asked you about it again, you gave the same answer,
Yes, sir.
but you knew that was a lie.
Yes, sir.
Again, you lied because you wanted to give a plausible answer to Ms. Fulton as to why you didn't go to the wake.
Yes, sir.
But on the April 2nd interview, you were in fact under oath.
Yes, sir.
And you knew that.
Yes, sir.
And you made a decision then, because of how difficult the situation you had just been put in, you decided to lie about going to the hospital rather than say something that might be painful.
Yes, sir.
In the interview, in the first conversation with Ms. Fulton on March 19th and in the letter on March 19th, at no time did you mention that you heard Trayvon Martin say a little get off, correct?
Yes, sir.
Is that yes? You did not say that?
Yes, sir. Repeat your question again.
In the meeting you had, the conversation you had with Ms. Fulton on March 19th, before you did the interview later, and in the written statement that you and Ms. Cerv prepared for Ms. Fulton, the personal statement, in neither of those instances did you say that you heard Trayvon Martin say, as you said later, a little get off, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's because you didn't think that was important at that point?
Because Carl and Miss Fulton did not ask me. Carl and Miss Fulton did not ask me about when the fight started in the grass. They did not ask me about that. He asked me about that.
So when you decided what part of what you knew to tell Ms. Fulton, you decided not to tell her that part.
She didn't ask me.
Well, I'm not sure that that was her answer, so you need to re-ask the question. I believe she said they never asked her that.
All right, now I'm asking about this witness's thinking. So when you decided what part of the information that you had about the events on the evening of February 26th, you decided in what to tell Ms. Fulton, not to tell her that you'd heard a little get off from Trayvon Martin.
Objection. Compound question, argumentative, and mischaracterizing what this witness has previously said.
Okay, as far as compound, do you understand the question?
No, ma'am.
Pardon?
No, ma'am.
Okay, you need to break it down then. She says she doesn't understand.
Okay. On March 19th,
Yes, sir.
you had a meeting with Ms. Fulton
Yes, sir.
out in front of her home.
Yes, sir.
You had already written the letter with Ms. Cerv to give to her.
Yes, sir.
When you wrote the letter about what happened on the evening of February 26th and decided what to put in it, you made the decision not to include that you heard Trayvon Martin say a little get off.
Yes, sir.
And then when you went to Ms. Fulton's house to talk with her, and she was so anxious to know what happened,
I
that
did
she
not go
needed.
inside her house, sir.
I know that, you're out front.
Yes, sir.
When you went to Ms. Fulton's house with the letter in hand, to talk with her, and she so desperately wanted to know what had happened, you, among the things that you chose to tell her, decided not to tell her that you'd heard her son say a little get off on the phone.
Yes, sir.
And you're saying that's because she didn't specifically ask you?
No, sir.
Could you explain your thinking?
I didn't want to be there, sir.
Of all the things that you decided were important to tell her, to write in the
She
letter
did not-
and to...
She did not ask me for examples.
She did not
Ask me for examples,
She did
definition,
not ask me for
no
examples.
examples, reasons, none of that. The state asked me that. Crump did not ask me that either. So, oh, sir.
Well, how would they know to ask you if you didn't tell them what you knew?
Objection, now, he's wanting the witness now to get in my mind as to why I asked something or not.
Okay, to the extent of her explaining why or why not the state did something, I'm going to sustain.
Whether or not someone specifically asked you, you made the decision not to volunteer that information.
I didn't think it was important. I wasn't being asked about the situation. I did not think it was important, so I was not being asked for that that part, so it didn't matter. He had asked me that. The state had asked me that.
All right, we'll talk about that in a little more detail in a minute, but let's progress now to the interview that you gave to Mr. Crump on the phone on March 19th, later the same day. You acknowledge that nowhere in that, what was it, about 30 minutes altogether?
You asked me?
The interview.
I don't remember.
But nowhere during that interview did you say, in response to any question, specific or general, that you'd heard Trayvon Martin say a little get off.
He did not ask me when the fight happened. I had told him the phone had just shut off. He didn't ask me, did you hear when there was fighting going on? Did you hear something was going on between the fight? No, he did not ask me that. The state asked me that, sir.
Well, what you told Mr. Crump was that you heard Trayvon Martin say, "Why you following me?" And then you heard Mr. Zimmerman say either, "What are you talking about?" or "What are you doing around here?" And then you heard something that you described as sort of a bump, and that the phone cut off.
I had told him the bump, it gotta be his headset. His headset is always on his left ear.
And
he's a
what,
speaker.
yes, and what you said to Mr. Crump was, at that point, the phone cut off.
Yes, I kept it simple and quick.
Right, so once the phone cuts off,
I had called back.
there's nothing else that you have to say, correct? Because once the phone cuts off, you certainly can't hear anything else that might have been said because the phone had been disconnected.
Yes, sir.
So you told Mr. Crump that the phone cut off.
Yes, sir.
So if you say at the point where there was this exchange, the conversation, the exchange, and the bump, and the phone cut off, doesn't that leave the impression that there was nothing else you could hear after that?
Yes, sir.
And you didn't at that point say, oh, by the way, no, I heard more after that,
He
actually.
didn't ask me more, sir. The state had asked me more, sir.
Well, are you saying then that when you told Mr. Crump that after you heard the bump and the phone cut off, that you decided not to tell him that after the bump, but before the phone cut off, you heard Trayvon Martin say a little get off, get off?
That's a compound question.
Do you understand the question?
Yes, ma'am.
You may answer.
Like I told you from the beginning, that interview, I think it lasted like 13 minutes, I don't know, but it didn't last for that long. So I had to rush on it because I really did not want to be on the phone, sir. So I did not take my time, just like I took my time. I had more time when I was talking to the state. With Crump, no. So the question is no.
So of all of the things that you thought might be important for them to know about what you knew,
I had told
you
you.
decided not to say that before the phone shut off, you heard Trayvon Martin say a little get off, get off.
Objection asked and answered.
Okay, let's have it answered one more time and then move on.
May we approach the bench, please?
No, she can answer the question. Go ahead and answer.
Yes, sir.
So you made the decision then not to tell Mr. Crump that you'd actually heard Trayvon Martin say, get off, because you were in a hurry?
Objection asked and answered.
The word in a hurry is an additional part to that question, so I will allow it. You may answer.
Yes, sir. Because Crump is not law forces.
So you weren't worried about telling him, first of all, the truth
He's
or
not.
the whole story?
First of all, Crump is not law enforcement. He's not an officer. I knew that he was not an officer. So, like I told the mother from the beginning, if officer wants to talk to me, know the exact story, everything about what happened that night, they will reach me at my number. You got it?
If I got it, what I heard you to say is that you told Ms. Fulton that if they wanted to hear everything, that an officer, that you would tell everything to an officer.
Yes, sir.
But they didn't put an officer in contact with
I
you.
don't know about that, sir.
Well, you know you didn't get any messages or get any calls from an officer.
Objection
No.
been asked and answered.
Overrule.
No, sir.
So when you were then talking with Mr. Crump in this recorded interview, for the first time ever being asked to tell the story about what you knew, you were in a hurry, and among the things that you chose not to say was that before the phone cut off, but after the bump, you heard Trayvon Martin say a little get off, get off.
Objection asked and answered.
This will be the last time the question will be asked and answered. You may answer.
Yes, sir.
So let's move then to the April 2nd interview, where you did have a chance to tell Mr. De La Rionda everything.
Yes, sir.
And that was your purpose?
Yes, sir.
This was the interview by law enforcement that you'd been waiting for,
Yes, sir.
that you knew was coming,
Yes, sir.
and that you were ready to tell everything just like it was,
Yes, sir.
even if that was different than what you'd said before.
I never thought that the interview would be in the mother house with the mother. No.
I never thought the interview would be at the mother house with the mother. what you said?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you had a chance to read the transcript of your interview with Mr. De La Rionda on April 2nd, 2012?
Not all of it.
When's the last time you had a chance to look at it?
2 weeks ago.
Pardon me?
2 weeks ago.
When and where did that happen?
FDLE.
I can't hear you. Can you speak up just
I
enough?
said FDLE.
The Florida Department of Law Enforcement.
Yes, sir.
2 weeks ago at the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, you had a chance to review the transcript of the interview you gave with Mr. De La Rionda.
No, listen to it. I had a chance to listen to it.
Oh, so you had a chance to listen to the recording.
Yes, sir.
This was at the FDLE in Miami.
Yes, sir.
And who was present, if anyone, from the state attorney's office?
No, sir. 2 detectives. 2 FDLE detectives.
Do you remember the date that this took place?
No, sir.
A couple of weeks ago, though, you went to FDLE in Miami and they gave you a chance to review the statement.
Yes, sir.
And did you?
Yes, sir.
Did you review any other statements at that time?
The interview I had with you. I watched the interview that I had with you.
That would be a videotaped deposition?
Yes, sir.
Did you have a chance or did you review any other material in anticipation of coming to court?
No, sir.
Did you review the transcript or listen to the recordings made by Mr. Crum?
No, sir.
So let's talk a little bit about the interview on April 2nd, 2012. But I know that you talked about, in this case already, and that you talk about in that interview, the idea that the phone kept hanging up that day.
Yes, sir.
So in other words, you and Trayvon Martin would be talking, and for no apparent reason, the call would be lost.
Yes, sir.
Not because you hung up, correct?
No, sir.
Or because that you know
Bad
of. That,
signal.
pardon me?
Bad signal.
So you were plagued with a bad signal all day.
Yes, sir.
And you really never knew when the phone was going to disconnect.
No, sir.
And usually what would happen is that when the phone disconnected, one or the other of you would call each other back.
Yes, sir.
So throughout the course of the day, you wound up actually speaking with each other several hours.
Yes, sir.
What you remember about this case, though, and the phone disconnecting was that there were points in time within the conversation after George Zimmerman saw Trayvon Martin and began watching him that the phone hung up and that you dialed Mr. Martin back or that he dialed you back.
Yes, sir.
And then there were points in time where you would remember what was happening after the call was reconnected.
Yes, sir.
It's your recollection that while at the mailbox, that's when the phone hung up at least once?
Yes, sir.
And before that, after Mr. Zimmerman was keeping his eye on Trayvon Martin, do you remember the phone hanging up and having to reconnect?
Yes, sir. As he began walking back home to try to lose the Georgian, George.
First, before you get to that, we were using this, this point where Trayvon Martin says to you that Mr. Zimmerman is watching him. So from that point, you've said the phone did cut off a couple of times after that. But think this first. Before that point, do you remember talking to Trayvon Martin after he entered the complex and having the phone disconnect?
Yes, sir.
Where was he and when in the conversation did that take place?
The Mela area. The Mela area.
The only time you remember the phone disconnecting prior to learning from Mr. Martin that George Zimmerman was keeping his eye on him was, well, what you believe to be when Mr. Martin was at the mail area.
Yes, sir.
And after that, so after Mr. Martin left the mail area, as best as you know, and began walking towards where Trayvon was staying,
Yes, sir.
did the phone cut off again?
Yes, sir.
And then did you call him back?
Yes, sir.
And then after you called him back, that was in fact the last call of the evening between you and Mr. Martin.
Yes, sir.
That's the call that cut off.
Yes, sir.
The call that you lost or that was disconnected before the last call was when Mr. Martin was walking toward where he was staying.
Yes, sir.
And he had told you at that point that the man was in the car,
Yes, sir.
the man was on the phone,
Yes, sir.
and that he had decided to go ahead and go on home.
Yes, sir.
And you told him to do that, right?
Yes, sir.
In fact, you told him to run.
Yes, sir.
And as far as you know, he did.
Yes, sir.
And at the point that he ran, Mr. Zimmerman was still in the car.
I don't know about that, sir. Because he told me the man started following him, sir.
Well, let's break it down step by step. At the point that you told Trayvon Martin to run, your understanding from piecing it all together was that Trayvon Martin was headed towards the back of where his father was staying.
He's going to
Run from the back,
Yeah.
which means to go in the back of the house as opposed to the front.
Yes, to try to lose the man who was following him.
Gotcha. So at that point, when he was walking and decided to go on home,
Yes,
that
sir.
Mr. Zimmerman was still in the car.
Still following him, sir.
In the car.
Yes, sir.
And that Mr. Zimmerman was on the phone.
I know about the phone, sir.
I thought you said that Trayvon Martin
That's
told
when
you
he was
this
watching
guy's...
him. He was watching him. Trayvon told me the man was just on the phone watching him.
So Trayvon Martin had told you that when he noticed the man watching him, that the man was in a car and that the man was on the phone.
And just watching him, yes, sir.
Exactly.
Yes, sir.
And that he started walking in the direction of his home
Yes, sir.
and that the man followed him.
Yes, sir.
And at
Kept
that,
following.
yes, in the car.
Yes, sir.
And that you had a conversation with Mr. Martin where you told him, well, just run on home.
Yes, sir.
And as far as you know, he did, correct?
No, sir. He had me. I told him run home, and then he said no, is no. And then a second later, he come and tell me he gonna make a run from the back area where his fiance lives.
Let's break that down just a little bit. So at the point that he says, the man's following me,
Yes, he was trying to lose the man.
let's break it down this way. Mr. Martin leaves what you think is the mail area and walks in the direction of where he stayed.
Sir.
Yes?
Yes, sir.
And at that point, Mr. Zimmerman was still in his vehicle.
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Martin continued to walk,
Yes, sir.
and he observed and told you that the man's following him in the car.
Yes, sir.
And then you said, well, run.
Yes, sir.
And he did run.
From the back area to try.
Well, he wasn't he was on the street or on the sidewalk in front of Mr. Zimmerman's car at the point that he decided to run.
Yes, sir.
And he ran.
Yes, sir. From the back area to try to lose him.
You don't know whether he ran in a direction where you could only travel by foot or whether you could drive.
No, sir. I don't live in that area.
Agreed, no. What you knew at that point, though, was that Mr. Zimmerman was still in his vehicle, probably still on the phone, because Trayvon Martin never said he wasn't. And
There's a witness to speculate as to what Mr. Zimmerman was doing or not regarding a phone.
Sustain, rephrase your question, please.
Mr. Martin never said he wasn't on the phone.
The only time that Trayvon told me the man was on the phone when he was at the Mellon area. That's the only time. I never knew about he was still on the phone. I never knew about that. He never told me about that.
Right, so,
He just told me the man started following him.
and that he was on the phone, and he never told you that he wasn't on the phone,
No.
but he was still in the car.
Yeah.
And
Yes,
at the,
sir.
and then that you said, well, run, and he ran, correct?
Yeah, from the back area to
That's
try.
what's confusing me. When you say ran from the back, are you saying that at the point that he decided to run,
Yes.
that he decided to run from where he was to the back of where he was staying?
Yes. To
And you
try.
don't know what direction he took to head that way,
No, sir.
because you don't know where he was at the point that he decided to run.
No, sir.
But you do know that he ran,
Yes, sir.
and you could tell because you could hear the wind.
Yes, sir.
And then the phone cut off.
Yes, sir. I think, yes. Yes, sir.
So at that point, you knew that he was running.
Yes, sir. When I called back. When I called back.
Right, well, let me take it a little slower. So at the point that he ran, you knew he was running.
Yes, sir.
You didn't know if he was running around on the street or sidewalk where Mr. Zimmerman could continue to follow him in the vehicle, or whether he ran through a cut-through or something where no vehicles.
Objection, argumentative as to what Mr. Zimmerman was doing, if she has no knowledge of Mr. Trayvon Martin's telling.
Well, it would be speculation if you have to ask her what she knows, what she thinks somebody else may have been doing.
Yes, of course. What I'm focusing on was at the point that Trayvon Martin ran. You have that point pretty clear in your mind, correct?
Yes, sir.
You don't know whether he ran around on the street that he'd been walking on, or
No,
whether
sir.
he ran through a part of the community where you can't drive.
No, sir. I had told you. When he ran, the phone lost contact. It shut off. So I had called back again. And
So at the point that he
Yes.
ran, the phone cut off,
yes, sir.
and then you called back.
Yes, sir.
And how long was it in between you losing the connection and you calling back?
I don't know, sir.
Well, do you think the phone was shut off by somebody? You didn't hang up, right?
No, sir.
And you have no reason to think that Trayvon Martin hung up.
No, sir.
So it seemed to you like what had been happening all day, that for no apparent reason, maybe bad signal, the call was lost.
Yes, sir.
So you talked with him then again. Was that a minute, 2 minutes, 5 seconds? Do you have any sense of, after he ran, when it was that you talked with Trayvon Martin again?
I don't understand what's your question.
If I might have a moment. Let me show you Defendant's 16. It's that call chart that we talked about yesterday.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead and take a minute and look at it. Yesterday, you said that as far as you knew, those were accurate times of the calls that you and Trayvon Martin had on February 26th, correct?
Yes, sir.
Because it was represented to you that those times were taken from the actual phone company records.
Yes, sir.
So you don't have any argument with that.
No, sir.
Well, take a look at the second to last call.
Yes, sir.
It began at 6:54:16 p.m. and disconnected at 7:11:47. You see that?
Yes, sir.
The next call picked up at 7:12:06. You see that?
Yes, sir.
And disconnected at 7:15:43. Correct?
Yes, sir.
So let's work backwards. Let's assume that at 7:15:43, the phone cut off when you were describing the interaction between Mr. Martin and Mr. Zimmerman.
Yes,
Okay?
sir.
So that call had started at 7:12:06, which was a little over 3 minutes, correct?
Yes, sir.
And there weren't any interruptions in that phone call.
No, sir.
And frankly, you don't know at 7:15:43 when the phone cut off, whether it cut off for any reason other than it was just one more lost call.
No, sir.
So look at the other call, though, the one before it, where it says it disconnected at a 7:11:47. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
And that the next call started at 7:12:06.
Yes, sir.
If you do the math and figure out how long it was between 7:11:47 and 7:12:06, to me, that is...
Can you please keep your, if you need to take a copy of that.
Of course, I'll step back. That's about 19 seconds, correct?
Yes, sir.
So, does that seem to you to be about right? That when Trayvon Martin ran towards the back of his father's house while George Zimmerman was in the car, that about 20 seconds elapsed before your call reconnected?
Yes, sir.
So the only time from before 7 o'clock, before any part of this case actually started,
Yes, sir.
you were on the phone with Mr. Martin for all of that time except about 20 seconds.
Yes, sir.
And it was the 20 seconds we're talking about where Mr. Martin had decided to run, and then you reconnected with him.
Yes, sir.
Would this be a good time for a short recess?
Do I need a brief recess? Yes. Okay, we're going to take a 15-minute recess,
If you'll just remain seated, Ms. Gentile. Ladies and gentlemen, put your notepads face down on the chair and follow Deputy Corporal Demps back to the jury room. Okay, Ms. Gentile, we're going to take you may be seated. We're going to take a 15-minute recess. You're going to be able to leave the stand, but I'll remind you not to discuss your testimony with anybody while we're on recess. Corporal Lapp, if you'll please help Ms. Gentile out. Is there anything we need to take up before we take a 15-minute recess? Okay, thank you. Court will be in recess for 15 minutes. Please be seated. We're back on the record. If counsel will approach for one brief moment. The jury back in.
Your Honor, there's a matter that I would like to take up with the court before the jury comes in.
Well, they're on their way, so come on and approach. Ladies and gentlemen, gotten some information that there may be some confusion as to what occurs when objections are made, so I'm going to go ahead and read to you the instructions that I read this when we began this trial Monday morning, and it's 2.1 preliminary instructions, the portion of which deals with objections. The attorneys are trained in the rules of evidence and trial procedure, and it is their duty to make all objections they feel are proper. When an objection is made, you should not speculate on the reason why it is made. Likewise, when an objection is sustained or upheld by me, you must not speculate on what might have occurred had the objection not been sustained, nor what a witness might have said had he or she been permitted to answer. Does that help clear that up? Okay, thank you very much. Mr. West, you may proceed.
Would the clerk please drop the screen? I'd like to display.
Yes. To dim or?
Well, I'm asking the assistance of the state's. We just want to.
It's on, it just has to warm up. It's warming up.
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. I don't know how long that'll take. In the meantime, I could just use this board. So, just for the record, State's Exhibit 1 is being published and available for the jury to see during the witness's testimony. And may I inquire?
Yes, you may.
Ms. Gentile, you see State's Exhibit 1 that appears to be a map, do you not?
Yes, sir.
I take it from your testimony you don't know what that is.
No, sir.
So I won't ask you to identify anything if you don't know what it is.
Yes, sir.
Okay, but I do want to talk with you about where we left off before the break, and
Yes,
that was
sir.
at the moment.
May I object to that exhibit being on, since this witnesses can't identify what it is, there's no purpose in this exhibit being.
Are you going to be questioning about the exhibit?
Your Honor, I want the exhibit on so the jury can put this witness's testimony in the context of what has already been acknowledged to be the community retreat at Twin Lakes.
Okay.
So what I'd like you to do, ma'am, is pick up at the point where we left off before the break, and that was when Trayvon Martin began to run and the phone disconnected. Okay?
Yes, sir.
You knew that he was running at that point because you could hear wind.
Yes, Mr. West. Yes, Mr. West.
Mm-hmm. So not only had you told him to run, but you believed that he was running.
Yes, sir.
And that's when the phone cut off.
Yes, Mr. Westner.
And then about 20 seconds later, you reconnected and you were able to talk with him.
Yes, Mr. West.
And you don't know where he was exactly at that point, correct?
He had told me he's in the back of his father's fiancé house.
So what you believed at that point was that when the call reconnected about 20 seconds later, he was already at the back of where he was
By
staying.
his father's fiancé house.
By the back of the father's fiance's house.
Yes.
That's where he was staying.
Yes, sir.
And while you didn't know where that was, your sense of it, your belief was that he was close to home.
Yes, sir.
So after he reconnected, that's where he said he was.
Yes, sir.
And then did you continue to talk with him?
Yes, sir.
And I know you think that's where he was, but what could you tell by his voice at that point?
Breathing hard.
He was breathing hard. Okay. Are you
Tired.
sure he was breathing hard, or that might have just been wind noise from the signal
No.
on the cell phone?
It was him breathing hard.
And
He sounded tired.
he sounded tired from running?
Yes, sir.
That was your impression.
Yes, sir.
And that he breathed hard.
Yes, sir.
And his voice changed too, didn't it?
Yes, sir.
It got kind of low,
Yes, sir.
almost like a whisper.
Yes, sir.
And then he continued to talk with you in that voice for a couple of minutes.
Yes, sir.
And about a couple of minutes later, he said he saw the man again.
Yes, sir.
And he saw, what he told you was the man was close to where he was.
Yes, sir.
And that's when Trayvon Martin decided to say to this man, "Why are you following me for?"
Repeat your question again.
A couple. Could we have that read back? Sorry, I've lost track.
Is the question or the answer?
My question.
And that's when, okay, and that's when Trayvon Martin decided to say to this man, "Why are you following me for?"
Right.
Yes, sir.
And he didn't say it, "Why are you following me for?"
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
He didn't say it, "Why you following me for?" He said, "Why you following me for?" Didn't he?
No, sir. Not that kind of way, sir.
It was just a question. "Hey, mister, why you following me for?"
He didn't say, "Hey, mister, why you following me for?" He just asked a question. "Why are you following me for?" And the man replied in the breathing voice that, "What are you doing around here?"
We've already been over that, what he said and what you said he said. But
Yes,
let's
Mr.
focus on
Your
that.
Honor, she's trying to answer the question.
Did you finish answering your question?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Ma'am.
You may ask your next question.
So, however, you'd been talking to Mr. Martin on the phone for a couple of minutes at this point.
Yes, sir.
He was talking kind of low, in a whisper,
Yes, sir.
and he said he saw the man close to him.
Yes, sir.
And then he decided to say to the man, "Why are you following me for?"
Objection asked and answered.
This will be the last time that's asked.
Yes, sir.
And at that point, you heard a response of some sort.
Yes, sir.
Either, "What are you talking about?" or "What you doing around here?"
What are you doing around here, sir?
And that's when you heard what you described initially as a bump.
Yes, sir.
When you talked to Mr. Delariondo on April 2nd, down at Sabrina Fulton's home,
Yes, sir.
at one point in the interview, you said to him, "So the last thing you heard was some kind of noise like something hitting somebody? And your answer was yes. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Like something hitting somebody, correct?
A bump, sir.
I'll say it again. So the last thing you heard was some kind of noise like something hitting somebody.
That Trayvon got hit. Trayvon got hit.
You don't know that, do you?
No, sir.
You don't know that Trayvon got hit.
He could. He had.
You don't
to.
know that Trayvon
He-
didn't at that moment take his fist and drive it into George Zimmerman's face,
Please lower your voice.
do you?
No, sir.
What you heard after that, though, when you talked to Mr. Crump, was nothing else. That's when the phone cut off.
Yes, sir.
That's what you wrote in the letter, correct?
Yes, sir.
That's what you told Ms. Fulton earlier in the day on March 19th.
Yes, sir.
However, on April 2nd, when you were talking to Mr. Delarianda in Sabrina Fulton's home, with her sitting next to you, when Mr. Delarianda says, okay, when you heard that noise, something hitting somebody, you didn't, did you hear the man say anything, or did you hear Trayvon say anything? Remember that question?
Yes, sir.
And up until that point, you had never told anyone that after this hit, that you heard anything else, correct?
Yes, sir.
But you said on that day, with Miss Fulton sitting next to you, I could hear a little bit.
Yes, sir.
And you said that I could just hear, like, I guess, like the headphone, because the headphone he might got off. Correct?
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Delarianda said, okay, what could you hear? And you said, like a little get off some stuff.
Yes, sir.
And that was the first time you'd ever said that to anybody, correct?
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Delarianda said, could you tell who was saying that?
Yes, sir.
And you said, I couldn't hear it was Trayvon. I couldn't know if it was Trayvon. Something like that.
Objection, proper.
If you have what she said, you need to read that.
I have to play it. I can't, the transcript isn't accurate enough because of the way it was said. We can mark that and maybe come back and play that.
Can I read it, sir? Can I read it? I'll tell you what I said.
If it has my notes on it, you can disregard those.
I don't need your notes. Just let me read it.
I'll see if I have one, I think. We can play it, Judge.
She's asked for the transcript so she can tell you what she said. I think that we should try that first.
Okay. It's a multiple page transcript. Let me find the one. transcript. Do you have an extra copy of that one? If I could, I don't mind looking at it.
Yes, you may.
Well, we'll take them both up there. How's that? Can we do that?
Yes, you may.
May I have first witness citizens for showing, I want to show them.
Yes, you may. Please don't block the view of the jury or get too close to the witness.
Ms. Gentile, this is a transcript, I believe, of that part of the conversation we've been talking about that I was referring to. And then this is the same part of the conversation from the transcript that Mr. Delarianda had. Would you just take a moment and look at the pertinent sections of each of those? Yeah, take your time. Have you had a chance to look at those?
Yes, sir.
So, does that refresh your recollection? Do you remember now what you said?
Yes, sir.
What is it that you said?
I had said he had asked me to make it clear.
In the microphone, please.
All right.
He had asked me to make it clear. I don't understand what you had said.
Make it clear.
To make it clear, did you said that he heard get off? I had said, yeah. I heard Trayvon saying get off a little bit, so, as I was calling his name.
So the question was, didn't you say to Mr. Delarianda on that tape-recorded interview, when he asked you if you knew who it was, you said...
It was Trayvon. I heard him.
I know that's what you're saying today, but I'm asking what...
Objection, improper impeachment.
If you'll read what she said on that date, that would answer that.
I'm going to read both of them because there's an issue on that. I thought the witness could straighten out. So, according to this transcript that you just saw, when Mr. Delarianda said, could you tell who was saying that, you said, I couldn't hear Trayvon.
I could hear it. Read the next page, sir.
I got that, but I'm talking about this one now, correct?
Yes, sir.
On the transcript that Mr. Delarianda has, on page 14, could you tell who was saying that? Your answer was, I could have heard Trayvon. I could have heard Trayvon.
Objection, improper, read the whole part as opposed to only
Do you want to complete her answer, please?
Oh, sure. Could you tell who was saying that? I could have heard Trayvon.
I could hear Trayvon.
Could have is what this says.
Trust me, they messed up. I could hear Trayvon.
What you What you said was, on that recording of that interview that you had a chance to listen to within the last couple of weeks,
I had
you
told
said,
them.
I could,
Stop. Again, one at a time. You need to finish your answer, and then you can ask your next question. Don't ask your question while she's trying to finish her answer. Complete your answer, and then
I
we'll have the
had
next
told
question.
him, because my voice is low, I had told him I could hear Trayvon. Can you just read it? You
Right.
can finish reading this, sir.
on this transcript it says, could you tell who was saying that?
I didn't write
And the
that.
transcript here says, let me finish
I did
reading.
not write that.
Okay,
I
you
know.
need to do the same thing. Wait till Mr. West finishes his question before you give the answer. And the reason I have everybody do that is because the court reporter can only take down one person talking at a time.
Yes,
So,
sir.
listen to the question.
So, according to this transcript, it says, could you tell who was saying that? And your answer was, I could have heard Trayvon. Mr. Delarionda said, I'm sorry, as if he couldn't hear what you said or understand it. You then said, I could have heard Trayvon.
I would ask that the,
And
thank you, could read the next half the page, which gives us a complete answer as to this issue.
well, there'll be lots of opportunity. What I would like to do now, though, Judge, is play the recording and let the jury decide what this witness said.
Is it in evidence? Is it in evidence?
I don't think it was pre-marked as in evidence, but we can offer it. We just want to play that part to see if it refreshes
I
this.
understand what you want to do. My question is it in evidence?
No.
And you don't think it is. Then it needs to be marked for identification. The state needs to say whether they object or not, and then I'll make a ruling as to whether it gets admitted. So if you want to take a moment to have it marked, you may do so.
Your Honor, okay.
May we approach the bench, and I'd ask that we approach with the transcripts so the court can read the actual transcripts in that part of it.
You may approach the bench. to take up a short matter outside of your presence, so if you'll please put your papers, notepads face down on the chair and follow Corporal Demps back into the jury room. Ms. Gentile, please remain seated. Stacy, they're going to play a portion of the tape for you to listen to. Okay, has it been marked? Please be seated. Has it been marked?
Did you ever get any response?
No, they didn't text me.
Okay, so the last thing you heard was some kind of noise, like something
Yeah.
hitting somebody?
Yeah.
Okay, and, when you heard that noise, something hitting somebody, did you hear the man say anything, or did you hear Trevon say anything?
I can hear a little bit.
Okay, what could you hear?
I could have just hear like it's like the headphone, cause the headphone he might got off, but I could still hear a little bit
Okay, what could you hear?
like a little get off, some stuff.
You heard get off?
Like a little get off. Now
Okay,
I call
that-
it
that
like
makes- Could you tell who was saying that?
I couldn't know Trayvon.
I'm sorry.
I couldn't hear Trayvon.
Okay, you're all right.
And your question to Ms. Gentile is?
That she said on the recording that I couldn't hear was Trayvon, or couldn't hear Trayvon, or could have Trayvon, whatever you can tell us that said.
Your Honor, I object this, not a complete in terms of this witness being able to hear, because the next part, she clears up what it is. The answer, they have cut it off midstream.
That's true, Judge, but the theory is that Mr. De La Rienda walked her right down the path, suggested things to this witness
Okay.
under the circumstances that she just followed along and agreed to.
I asked you, what is your question to this witness?
What did she say? What did you say right there?
I could hear Trayvon.
I could hear her.
Yes.
Let's play it again.
Did you hear the man say anything, or did you hear Trevon say anything?
I can hear a little bit.
Okay, what could you hear?
I could have just hear like it's like the headphone, cause the headphone he might got off, but I could still hear a little bit
Okay, what could you hear?
like a little get off, some stuff.
You heard get off?
Like a little get off. Now
Okay,
I call
that-
it
That makes- Could you tell who was saying that?
I couldn't know Trayvon.
I'm sorry.
Stop. What exactly did you say there? Would you just tell us exactly what that says?
Could hear Trayvon.
That's your testimony?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I understand the answer, and I want to play it in front of the jury and let them make up their own mind what she said.
Okay, any objections to this being introduced into evidence?
Yes, Your Honor.
What is the objection?
My objection is she's already stated what it is. I guess they're trying to, the interpretation, or the defense is arguing that this say something different.
Okay, please approach. I don't take speaking objections.
I apologize.
before the jury comes in, just. Well, it would be very helpful for this court if somebody would give me a copy of that transcript.
Okay.
Thank you. Can somebody direct me as to what page you're looking at?
I guess maybe we have an agreement then for this purpose.
Okay, thank you. Let's bring the jury in.
Let's be sure there's no technical issues, if we could just hold for 1 second and swear.
waiting for them to come in.
Okay, so the last thing you heard was some kind of noise, like something hitting somebody?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I think we're ready.
I've told them to bring the jury in, we're just waiting. I understand you're ready.
Jurors are present.
Please be seated. Mr. West, you may proceed.
Okay, we're back. Ms. Gentile, we're going to play part of the recording that we have been talking about. And if you would just listen to the piece from beginning to end of the section that we're playing, I would then like to ask you some questions after that, okay?
Okay, so the last thing you heard was some kind of noise, like something hitting somebody?
Yeah.
Okay, and when you heard that noise, something hitting somebody, did you hear the man say anything, or did you hear Trevon say anything?
I can hear a little bit.
Okay, what could you hear?
I could have just hear like it's like the headphone, cause the headphone he might got off, but I could still hear a little bit
Okay, what could you hear?
like a little get off, some stuff.
You heard get off?
Like a little get off. Now
Okay,
I'm calling
Could you tell who was saying that?
I couldn't know Trayvon.
I'm sorry.
I couldn't hear Trayvon.
Okay, let me make sure I understand it. You could hear, it was Trevon saying
Yeah,
that?
that's why I was calling his name.
And he was saying what now?
It was like get off.
Get off?
Yeah.
Is that clear that you were hearing that, or you think you heard that?
Yeah, I could hear it a little bit. Get off, get off. Then the phone just hung up.
Okay, all right. Now, before all this started, earlier in the day, had Trevon been talking to you, right? So you recognize his voice, right?
Yeah,
And you had heard him on prior occasions, so it was crystal clear this was Trevon talking to you,
Yeah.
right?
Did you hear that clearly enough?
Yes, sir.
So, at one point you said you could hear a little because the headphone mic got off.
Was on the grass, sir.
What? Right, but what you're saying here is the headphone, meaning you think that maybe the
Headset fell.
headset might have fell. That's what you were thinking might have happened?
Yes, sir.
But you believe that it was not in the usual position,
Yes, sir.
and that even though what you think the headset was off or got off in some way,
Yes, sir.
that you could still hear a little bit.
Yes, sir.
And what you said was you could hear a little like get off.
Yes, sir.
And when Mr. Della Rianda said who was saying that, didn't you say, I couldn't know it was Trayvon, or I couldn't hear it was Trayvon?
I couldn't hear it that well. It was Trayvon. But when I heard get off, and I started calling his name, Trayvon, what's going on?
I couldn't hear that but when I heard get off, and I started calling his name, Trayvon,
Could it sound like his voice?
does it sound like his voice?
Yes, ma'am.
It sounded like his voice, or it kind of sounded like
It sounded like his voice.
So help me understand this better. As far as what you said on the recording, when Mr. De La Rionda said, could you tell who was saying that, are you saying that what the jury just heard was you saying, I could hear it was Trayvon?
Yes, sir.
And you didn't say, I couldn't hear it was Trayvon, or I couldn't know it was Trayvon?
I said I could hear it's Trayvon. That's how I speak. You cannot hear me that well.
All right. You were having trouble hearing him because
He
you
had
couldn't.
trouble hearing me.
And now I'm really confused. Are you saying that
The state attorney had trouble hearing me. Him, next to you. The bald-headed?
that doesn't help much, does it?
No.
So, I'm sorry that I'm not quite clear on what you're saying. You're saying, first of all, to the jury that what you said is I could hear it was Trayvon.
I could hear it's Trayvon.
And then he asked you again, and you said, that's why I was calling his name.
Yes.
But by then, the phone was disconnected.
Yes.
So you heard, when you gave the, when you answered the questions and gave, for the first time, that you heard this little get off on April 2nd, the phone cut off right after you heard get off.
Yeah. Not cut off. Like you can hear grass sound, wet grass, and you hear Trayvon just saying get off, then now it's saying Trayvon, and the phone hung up. Ended. The phone ended.
Hmm?
The phone had ended.
The phone
Ended.
had what?
Ended.
So what you're saying is that after you heard something hitting somebody, then you heard grass.
Repeat your question again.
After you say that you heard something hitting somebody, then you heard grass.
I didn't say that. I didn't say somebody was hitting somebody. I heard get off. That's what I said. I started hearing somebody saying, Trayvon saying, get off, sir.
At the beginning of the recording we just played, Mr. De La Rionda said, so the last thing you heard was some kind of noise, like something hitting somebody, and you said, yeah. Do you agree?
If I said yes, sir.
Well, you just heard it, right? Did you hear that?
No, sir.
Could we play that again?
No, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Could we play that part again?
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, so the last thing you heard was some kind of noise, like something hitting somebody?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you hear that?
Yes, sir.
Is that you?
Yes, sir.
And then when Mr. De La Rionda said, basically after that, did you hear the man say anything or did you hear Trayvon say anything? And you said, I could hear a little bit. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So this is the point where in prior statements you said the phone cut off, correct?
Yes, sir.
But today, in Ms. Fulton's living room, and he asked you, could you hear anything else? You said, yeah. As a matter of fact, I could hear a little bit. Correct?
Yes, sir.
And the first thing you said, well, I could just hear, like, I guess, because the headphone might have come off or you might got off. So you're saying there that you heard the headphone in your mind
Came out.
came off. And then the next thing you heard was grass.
Yes, sir.
Can you describe that for me? When you say you could hear grass, or even wet grass, like you said yesterday, could you tell me how wet grass sounds?
Wet, like leaf rolling all over.
When you describe the sound as you could hear wet grass, what is it that you actually heard that led you to make that opinion?
Somebody rolling on top of the grass.
Are you
Sir.
saying now that you heard people rolling on the grass?
It's actually improper characterization of what she stated.
You sustained, you asked her to describe, and she gave you what she could give as a description. It's,
Well, let's hone in on that just a second. So you said in this interview, and then you said today, that after the sound of something hitting somebody, and you think the headphone might have been off, you heard wet grass. And I want to know what it is you actually heard that made you form that opinion.
The headset.
I'm sorry?
The headset. All you can hear is somebody rolling on the headset. Cause Trayvon had his headset. So
Are you saying now that you heard somebody rolling on the headset?
yeah, on top of the Trayvon.
No,
It had to be on top of the Trayvon. That's where his headset be at.
Are you saying that the sound of wet grass that you used to describe this yesterday, as you describe it today, you're saying that you believe that was people rolling around on the ground?
Yes, sir.
And what's that based on? What is the sound you heard that led to that conclusion?
I really don't know how to describe it.
I don't
I
know.
really do not know how to describe that
Do you know how one of those headsets works?
like this.
Right. So if something brushes against it, you hear just like what you heard here, right?
Yes, sir.
So it could have been fabric. It could have been wind. It
No,
could have
I know
been
how
a
it-
1,000 other things than somebody rolling on the ground, couldn't it?
Yes, sir.
And for that matter, you don't even know what get off means. Whether that means somebody on top saying that the person underneath was saying get off, or somebody was backing up and saying get off, or
Objection, argument.
what,
let me hear the rest of the question.
or what may have been meant if in fact you even heard it.
I did hear get off, sir.
But you don't know what it meant because you didn't see any of this, correct?
No, sir.
And you don't know now how long that took from the point that you heard something hit somebody until you heard the wet grass, until you heard the get off, until the phone disconnected. How long did that take?
I don't know, sir.
Is,
I was not timing
Well, in fact, I take it that you were in your house trying to fix up your hair.
Trust me. Trust me, I had stopped.
Yesterday, didn't you say that when this conversation was taking place,
When we was
you were
ta-
fixing your hair?
Yes. As Trayvon was waiting for the rain to slow down from the melon area. That's what I said.
At what point then, if any, in this conversation did you pay particular attention
When I had called back.
when he was sort of whispering in the low voice after
When
he
I
said he
had
lost
called
the man?
Yeah, after he finished running.
All right, so were you still working on your hair or did you stop?
No, sir.
Were you paying particular attention at this point?
Yes, sir.
So were you on a handset or Bluetooth at that point?
Bluetooth.
Were you doing anything else other than listening intently to what was being said?
Yes, sir.
What were you doing?
Trying to listen what's going on. I'm trying to listen to Trayvon because I had my Bluetooth on.
You were still at home?
Yes,
Were you
sir.
doing anything else?
I was in the bathroom.
Was the water running?
No, sir.
Why not?
Why I need the water on?
I don't know, I'm asking.
I'm trying to fix my hair. I don't need the water on. I put the iron down, the hair iron down, after I called Trayvon back. And I called back. He answered. He told me he ran from the back.
So at that point, you were still in the bathroom?
Yes, sir.
Any background noise at all?
No, sir.
And you had stopped fixing your hair? And you were listening only to the phone call?
Yes, sir. I had called him back.
Right, and that's when he had stopped running and that he was speaking in this lower, more like whispering voice. Correct?
No, sir. I told you he sounded tired. Because I had told him keep running. He said, nah, he'll just walk faster. And I said, okay, because it sounded to me like he was tired. His voice had changed, sir.
So this was after he had lost the man.
Yes. He
And
ran from the back.
He was tired from running,
Yes, sir.
is what you assumed,
Yes, sir.
as if he had run a long way,
Yes, sir.
and that you knew his voice was lowered, as opposed to his normal talking voice.
I didn't say his voice was low. I did not say his voice was lower.
You told Mr. Del Riondo on April 2nd that it was.
It sounded like he was tired. That's what I told you.
We'll come back to that in a moment, but don't want to lose track of what we're doing here. So you were in the bathroom, and because of what Trayvon Martin was saying, you were paying more attention at this moment than you had been previously,
Yes, sir.
and that you knew at this point that he had run and that he had lost
Yes,
the man,
sir.
correct?
Yes, sir.
And that his voice had changed,
Yes, sir.
and you thought it was because he was tired from running,
He sounded tired, sir.
and you don't know how far he may have run.
No, sir.
Overruled, that would be the last time for that question.
You don't know how far he'd run.
No, sir.
And you have this conversation with him for a couple of minutes. And then he says he sees the man again.
Yes, sir.
And are you really paying attention now?
I was been paying attention, sir.
I'm sorry,
I was been paying attention, sir.
I was.
Been paying attention, sir.
So after you're talking to him on the phone, he seems out of breath for a couple of minutes. He says to you he sees the man again. And you pay particular attention now?
I was been paying attention, sir, when I had called him back.
answer is yes, you were focusing on this.
Yes, sir.
And as he says, he sees the man, and as he confronts him and says, "Why are you following me?" you're really paying attention then.
Objection to this characterization in terms of the word confront.
Okay. Ask her a question, let it be her words.
He confronted him by saying, "Why are you following me?" didn't he?
Objection, Your Honor.
We'll listen to your answer. You may answer.
And he told me to do was close to him.
Right. At that point, he decided to approach this man and say, "Why are you following me?"
Yes, sir.
And he could have just run home if he wasn't there.
He was already by his house. He told me.
Of course, you don't know if he was telling you the truth or not.
Why he needs to lie about that, sir?
Maybe if he decided to assault George Zimmerman, he didn't want you to know about it.
That's real retarded, sir. That's real retarded to do that, sir. When you don't know the person, why a person? Trayvon did not know him.
Okay. What I'm trying to get at is, you're paying attention to this. Somebody or something hit somebody. In all your statements before, you said that's when the phone cut off. And in your statement on April 2nd, you're saying you heard a little get off, get off. And today you're saying it sounded like somebody rolling on the ground, correct?
Objection to this characterization is to the prior statements that she
Okay,
made.
I think that response was because you asked her to describe what she meant by wet grass. So, objection sustained. You may ask your next question.
And what I'm focusing on now is how long did that take for you to hear all of that stuff going on before the phone cut off?
I don't know, sir. I was in timing it, sir.
What your sense of it? I know that you weren't timing it. You'd never said that before. So when you said it to Mr. Della Rionda, how long do you think it took since you were so concentrating on that?
Objection, ask and answer.
You may answer the question.
I don't know, sir.
But you knew something had just happened.
Yes, sir.
And in the statement on April 2nd is when you said, get off, and it was kind of low, correct?
Yes, sir.
Kind of low for a couple of reasons. One, because it wasn't said very loudly, or because the headset was somewhere else.
I don't know, sir. I wasn't there, sir.
And you don't really know who actually said that, even if it were said, do you?
Yes, sir.
It could have been Trayvon, is what you said, correct?
Yes, sir.
So, at the point, though, that all of that happened, you are saying now that you knew something had taken place.
Yes, sir.
But the reason you didn't do anything about it, tell anybody what you had heard, come forward to the police, is because in your mind it was just a fight. Correct?
Yes, sir.
And in fact, it was just a fight that Trayvon Martin started. That's why you weren't worried. That's why you didn't do anything. It was because Trayvon Martin started the fight and you knew that.
Objection, compound question, badgering the witness.
Okay, you may answer.
No, sir. I had told you before. I did not knew this man was out of jail.
I'm
So,
talking. Go
I
ahead.
don't know what you're talking about.
I'll say it again. After you were concentrating so closely on that last part of the conversation with Mr. Martin, where he's speaking in a lower voice for a couple of minutes, And then he says, I see the man again.
I'm going to object to mischaracterization as to the time that this witness heard Mr. Martin.
Okay, please rephrase your question.
After Mr. Martin ran and you reconnected with him, you were talking with him for a couple of minutes before he told you he saw the man again, correct?
Yes, sir.
And during that time, he was speaking in this somewhat low, that you considered to be out of breath tone.
Yes, sir.
And you started paying particular attention because he said to you, he sees the man again, or the man's following him.
Yes, sir. You can still hear the wind, sir. You can hear the wind, sir. I could hear the wind. That's how I know Trayvon was still walking, sir.
As opposed to hiding.
Yes, sir.
So you think he was walking as opposed to hiding because you could hear wind on this headset?
Yes, sir.
As if he couldn't be standing still and there could also be wind?
Trust me, it was not windy. Yes, sir.
At the point, though, where he tells you that he sees the man again, or as he said, the man's right there,
Yes, sir.
he decides to approach the man and say, why are you following me for?
Objection, argumentative, and misstatement of the facts.
Sustained.
No, sir.
The objection's been sustained, so we'll wait for another question. Thank you.
There's no question in your mind, is it, that Trayvon Martin, based upon what you said and what he said and what you heard, that he approached the man and said, why are you following me for?
Same objection, Your Honor, and also compound question.
Okay, sustained.
May we be heard at the bench, please?
No. Ask your question again.
You believed at that point that Trayvon Martin approached the man and said, why are you following me for?
No, sir.
Well, do you want to explain that?
Trayvon told me the man was behind him and kept being close by him. That told me a lot. Close.
Trayvon told me that the man was behind him and kept being close by him. And what you said after that?
That's give you the point. That gave me a point that the man was behind Trayvon. Sir.
So he told you that he could see the man again, the man was behind him,
Yes.
correct?
Close.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
And if he were hiding somewhere and the man walked close to him, they would be close together, correct?
Objection, argumentative, and in fact.
Sustained.
Ju- In any event, your sense of it was that they got close together at that point.
He got close to Trayvon. Yes, sir.
And you don't know whether the man was approaching Trayvon at that point and getting closer, or whether Trayvon was approaching the man and getting closer.
Trayvon would have told me he'll call me back, sir, if he was going to approach him, sir.
So you're assuming that Trayvon didn't approach the man because he would have told you if he was going to confront the guy, he would call you back when it was over?
Yes, sir.
In any event, you knew something was going to happen, I take it.
No, sir.
You knew that he had said to the man, why are you following me for?
Yes, sir.
And you knew in your mind that it was going to be a fight.
No, sir.
But when you...
Maybe an argument.
You thought Trayvon Martin would approach a man he'd never seen in his life, and
I did
that
not
he
say
would...
Trayvon approached the man, sir.
Either way, Are you saying that you thought that Trayvon would have the discussion with that guy that he'd never met in his life, didn't know who he was, didn't know anything about him, this creepy-ass cracker, and have just a gentlemanly conversation about why you following me for?
The dude was close. The man was close to him, sir. He just.
So Trayvon decided, instead of just running away, to confront this guy.
Objection, argumentative,
Of course
speculation.
it's...
No, sir.
But at the end of all of this, after you heard something hitting somebody, what you thought
bump,
might...
Sir.
Hmm?
A bump, sir. A bump.
We played it right at the beginning of this recording. Mr. Delarianda said the last thing you heard was something hitting somebody, and you said yes.
Objection, improper impeachment. Based on I'll be glad to clarify.
Thank you. You may answer the question.
I don't remember saying that, sir.
Given all of that, whatever it was, whether it was a bump, whether it was somebody hitting somebody, I thought, in fact, that you said that it could have been, for all you know, Trayvon Martin smashing George Zimmerman in the face, is what you actually heard.
What?
Yeah, just earlier today.
By who?
By you.
You ain't get that from me.
After all of that happened, you decided not to do anything because you thought it was just a fight and that you didn't need to come to Trayvon Martin's aid, did you?
What? Repeat what your question again, sir.
Whatever that was happening that you were paying particular attention to, you decided that you didn't need to call anybody, call the police, report anything because you thought it was just a fight.
I did call him back, sir.
Of course, but you didn't get an answer. Didn't that make you even more worried?
I called back again, sir.
And I would assume that would heighten.
And I had text, sir.
Still no answer.
No, sir.
A couple of calls, a text, and no answer.
No, sir.
And the reason you didn't do anything was because you thought it was just a fight.
And I thought his father was around there.
But you thought it was just a fight because it was one you knew that Trayvon Martin was planning to start.
No, sir. He would have told me, sir, and told me to call him back or he'll call me back, sir.
So you figure then that if Trayvon Martin was getting ready to sucker punch somebody and get in a fight, that he would have told you, let me take care of this and I'll call you right back?
Argumentative, speculation.
Is that what you're saying? That you're saying that if Trayvon Martin was getting ready to assault this man, that he would have said, hang on a minute, I'll call you back?
Say objection, argumentative, speculation.
Just 1 second. Overruled.
No, sir. He would not let me on the phone.
But you wouldn't.
No, sir.
You,
No, sir, he would not.
Allow me on the phone with him if he was about to have a fight.
I didn't.
Sir.
I didn't understand it. Say that again. What about that he would have told you if he was getting ready to have a fight?
If he was going to confront the man, he would have told me, oh, I'm about to confront the man and see what he wants. He did not tell me that, sir. He just told me he trying to get home, sir. But the man was still following him, sir.
So you're assuming that if Trayvon Martin were planning to confront this man and assault him, that he would have given you a heads up?
Objection is a mischaracterization of what this witness said.
The witness's answer is what it is.
Well, has he ever told you that before? That he was going to assault someone and he'd call you back?
Objection, improper questioning.
Well, that's not a
Honor,
proper
I'll be glad
objection,
to,
so.
I didn't want to make a
overruled.
speaking objection, Your Honor. We've had this issue before.
Counsel, please approach.
In any event, you didn't take any steps or even have any particular concern about what you heard, because in your mind it was just a fight.
I did, sir.
In the conversation that you had with Mr. Della Rionda on April 2nd, he asked you some questions about whether Trayvon Martin had told you that the man had gotten out of the car. Do you remember those questions?
No, sir.
Let me take a minute and find the reference. So Mr. Della Rionda said to you in a question, I can read it exactly or paraphrase it, but the conversation was that Mr. Della Rionda asked you.
May I see it, sir? May I see it, sir?
Yes, but let me set the stage, if I might. Mr. Della Rionda said, but did he ever say the guy got out of the car?
I don't remember, sir.
You don't remember that
Who are you
Mr.
talking
Della...
about?
Here's what I'm talking about. That Mr. Della Rionda asked you, did he ever say the guy got out of the car? And your response to him was, you want that too? Do you remember that?
I don't remember, sir.
Let's play.
May I
Asked for you to show her, so if you'll please give her a copy. Yes, you may. Yes, you may.
All right, let me direct your attention to this paragraph, ask you to read that, and it's my note here underneath is what I thought I heard your answer was. So I want you to see if you remember that and if that was your answer, and I'll ask you that.
No, sir.
What is it that you say no?
That's not what I said.
You
That's,
did-
I can't hear you.
that's not what I said. That's your opinion, sir.
All right.
That's what you thought I
On
said.
the paragraph where Mr. Delagranda asks you, did he ever say the guy got out of the car?
Keep reading this, sir.
And I said, the transcript says that you said you want that too. And you're saying you didn't say that?
No, sir.
Do you remember what you said instead?
No, sir. But I did not say that.
You do specifically remember that when Mr. Delagranda asked you, did he ever say the guy got out of the car, that you did not say in response, you want that too?
No, sir. I did not even say you want that too. No, I did not say that, sir.
Okay. Could we play that portion, please? I think we have a few.
Judge, I have no objection to that
Thank you.
sentence only, or whatever.
Well, let's just play.
I'm going to object to the rest. I mean, I apologize, I don't mean to make a speaking objection.
Well, let's play that part first.
Improper impeachment in the manner in which it is being played, my objection.
What is the purpose for it being played, sir?
So the jury
No.
can hear for themselves whether or not Ms. Gentile gave the answer that she just denied giving.
She said those were your notes, not hers.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know what transcript both sides have. I have somebody's transcript, and there's supposedly difference in the transcripts.
Well, Mr. Delagrande's transcript has the witness's response the same way that I do.
Could you show me what page it's on? Because I don't know whose I'm looking at.
Just let the jury hear what.
Well, I've asked a question. Could you tell me, first of all, whose transcript do I have?
May I just clear up that I gave it to you? I gave it to you, it's ours, it does not have an answer on it because it was added in earlier, so what you have just has asterisks, that's not gonna help you.
Could you please tell me what page?
Down page 15, may I approach and just get you to the page? The end of the last line of the page is when he was at the bail thing. You can find that way.
Okay, I must have a different one.
May I approach you on it?
Yes. The pages are not numbered.
Here is the mic. And it's where the asterisks are, 3/4 of the way down.
I think it's page 14.
Where it doesn't have it.
There's more information about that, so I think you need to play both. Well, the transcript I have from that question, it has asterisks. There's no answer.
You know, my proposal is that that question and that answer, and her answer be provided, and
But for what purpose? If it's for impeachment, because your transcript doesn't have an answer.
that's right.
It has
because
4
the-
asterisks.
Yes, the transcriptionist seemingly couldn't hear it. Mr.
Okay.
Delarianda's
But you're
transcriptionist could, and I believe it's audible enough that the jury can hear it if we just play the recording.
I don't have the other transcript. Is it at all possible for me to get a copy of that?
That would be in the state's possession.
Your Honor, I can see if I've got a clean one. Mine's all.
Just show the court if you'd like.
For the record, on our transcript, it's at the bottom of page 16, and it continues all the way through page 17.
Thank you.
Sorry. I'll make sure because this has got bottom of page 16 all the way through page 17.
Thank you. Guess I don't see the language that you had indicated what was said, Mr. West. Where your asterisks are?
Yes, where the asterisks are on this transcript, Mr. Delarianda has a phrase.
Okay, counsel, please approach because I, Ladies and gentlemen, your lunch is here, so I'm gonna, the hungry grumblings I hear in your stomachs will be satisfied. During the lunch period, you're not to discuss the case amongst yourselves or with anybody else. You're not to read or listen to any radio, television, or newspaper reports about the case. You're not to use any type of an electronic device to get on the internet to do independent research about the case, people, places, things, or terminology. And you're not to read or create any emails, text messages, Twitters, tweets, blogs, or social networking pages about the case. Do I have all of your assurances that you will abide by these instructions? Okay, with that, if you'll please put your notepads face down on the chair and follow Corporal Debs out to the jury room. Stay seated for just a moment. Be seated for just a moment. Everybody be seated. Court is going to be in recess until 1:45. Ms. Gentile, you need to be back here at 1:45. Again, you're not to discuss what your testimony has been or will be with anybody, including any of the lawyers. Do you understand? Yes, ma'am. Okay, can we have a deputy escort Ms. Gentile out of the courtroom? Is there anything else that we need to take up before we recess for lunch? Okay, thank you very much. We'll be in recess.